you know, go through either listening to nothing or having to fast forward through it. So today we're working on 2 blocks. This is the disappearing 9 patch. And you can see it ends up being a square, rectangle, rectangle, and a little square. And then the disappearing 4 patch ends up being a square with 2 rectangles. So a rectangle here. Well, it's a little harder to explain, but you'll have some rectangles, squares, and then you'll have a little 4 patch in the center. So that one I made with 5-inch squares or a charm pack. You can do it with any size squares you want. And the little one I did with a mini charm pack or 2.5-inch squares. So I think it's, I'm just making sure I got to the message section. Okay. So I think we're ready to start. So we're going to start with the 9 patch. And a 9 patch, the only thing 9 patch means, let me move my ruler all out of the way here. There we go. Let me see if I can turn that just a little bit more this way. Okay. So what 9 patch means is there's 9 squares or 9 patches. So 3 across and 3 down. So I'm going to sew this from the beginning because I know some people haven't learned about how to flip and sew and keep everything in line. I'm starting out with what I call a starter. So I've taken two of these squares like this, and I'm just sewing them together so I can use it as a starter, but it'll also give me a start on the next block. And I'm only doing 2 because then I have the ability to move it around. So to start with, I'm going to, I think of it as like reading a book. I'm going to flip this one over on top of this one, just as if I'm turning a page in a book. And I'm going to start with the first one and line it up. And I don't have to worry about my needle going or my fabric going down in the hole because I have another fabric already there. I am today using my 1/4-inch foot with the guide. I have my pivot on, so if you have pivot on your machine, you want to use it. I'm going to pick up the next one in order, and I'm going to leave this just like it is. So it's always good to have I have a little cutting mat or whatever you can use, a tray. Some people use like a cookie sheet, whatever it takes, just to keep everything in order. And I'm not stopping between in that. I'm not cutting in between. I'm just continuing on. And I'm going to butt them up close together, but not so close that there's no give there at all. So there might be like 1 or 2 stitches in between. And I would put another starter in. I don't know what I did with my squares now. Pardon my arm. Okay. Oh, I moved them over here. I was showing them to you. I forgot. So when I come around, I'm going to cut this first one off because it's not part of my 3, and I'm just going to throw it in my bucket. And I'll just do these regular so you can see without having wondering what the other squares are for. So I'm going to open this up and lay it down just as I had it to begin with. And I'm not going to worry about pressing my seams because I don't know which way they need to go yet. So now I'm putting it in order. So now I'm going to take this, this, and this, and again, turning the page. And I'm just gonna, you could clip each one. So you could do it this way. Or pin them if you want, okay, and do that. Or I just leave it right there so I know where everybody is. Because see, I'm all hooked together, so I'm not going to get out of order. So I'm going to go ahead and sew the first one. I'm going to open up my second one. And I'm going to take this one and lay it right on top. So if it's easier for you when you first start doing this to pin those each on, that's fine. Or if you just like to pin, now I'm going to open up this one. And see, it won't open the wrong way. I have to have it going the right way for it to open. I got to remember not to leave my arm in your way. I'm sorry. So now I'm all together. See? So nobody's going to run away from home, get out of and get lost. So there's my 9-patch still going. I'm going to turn my iron on because I think I shut it off. So now I need to sew this row to this row, this row to this row. So I have to determine who's going what way in the seams. So as a rule, my top ones will go out and my middle one will come in. So I'm going to flip it over, and a lot of times your fabric will tell you what it wants to do. So see, my top one's going to go out. So let me bring my pressing mat into view here. Here we go. So here's my 3 rows. Here's my 3 rows. Hold on, I'm going to move my iron. It's a pretty little pressing mat. There we go. So here's my 3 rows. So I'm going to flip it over. And again, everybody's going to stay where they belong. So now I'm going to press, and I could use my rolling press, but for today, I'm going to show you how to press as opposed to iron. Good morning, Sandy. Good morning, Rhonda. Good morning, Christine. Okay. Someone was asking me about my little mat that I have here. This one I got when I did an Eleanor Burns. Some of us did an Eleanor Burns kit, and it came with it. I think that maybe Floriani might have one that size. This one's about 12 by 8 or so. And this is my little wool mat that I also got, I think was in that kit as well. I will put some links down below for the wool mat. Comes in different sizes after I put the video up as as recorded. Okay, so I'm pressing out then my bottom, and press means just this, up and down, press up and down. I'm not ironing, I'm just pressing up and down. And when I move the iron over, I'm up above my fabric. And these are going to come in. And the top one, so I'm going to turn my mat around because I can't reach that far with this cord. And my bottom one's going to go out. So I'm just going to come over all of them, and I'm just going to give it a little press, and you can steam. I'm a steamer. Okay, so now when I put these together, I'm just going to pick these two up and put them together. These seams, let's see. Oh, wrong way. See how close I can get that it'll have a clear view. There we go. So see, the back seam is over here and the front seam is here. And that means they'll lock together and stay together. You can pin if you'd like to. I'm going to keep my finger right where those seams lock together, but I need to make sure that my fabric is straight along here first. So I'm keeping my finger right where the two seams are locked together. And once I get over the seam, I can let go and I'll get my next one lined up. And they pretty well line up because of that, the stitching that you have here, whether you stitch them together, kind of keeps everybody in their place. And again, let me get my hand out of the way this time. I'm going to hold on where that locking seam is. And I don't want to let go now because this can start to curve this way. And you're going to find sometimes if your blocks are kind of wider at the end or narrower at the end, it's because you let go or you stop looking at what you were doing. So my eye is looking at my guide, not at my needle. Okay. So my first row is done, and you can see how they match up. Now I'm going to do my last row. And again, I'm going to make sure these pieces, let me see how, will it zoom in there for me? So now this seam is going this way, that seam is over that way. Keeping my finger on that seam again. I can stitch a stitch or two. That gives me another, I call it my third hand, because now that's holding the fabric for me. Now I can get everybody lined up. I can feel that that seam is locked in. I want to make sure my fabrics are even on the right hand side. Apparently I'm a left-handed holder. Once I get past that seam, because I don't want to be pulling this and matching it up, or pulling the bottom to match it up, and then I move that seam that was matched up here. So I want to stitch past that seam. I'm going to make sure that I look underneath to see that that seam is going that way, so I know this is that way, just in case it flips on you. Again, I'm going to put my finger right on that seam. I'm going to stop, make sure that my ends are still lined up, and I'm still lined up on this side. And I'm hanging on right to the end. Okay, so now I've got my 9 patches sewn. So now I've got to think about my pressing. So let me see if I can come in a little bit. There we go. Oh, let me do it this way. So I need to pay attention to these fellas are going out, these are in, these are out. So what I'm going to look at is I have less seam. Well, I guess we have the same amount of seams either way. So you can come in or you can go out. So in this case, I'm just going to go out with both of them. Let me back up again. Oh, back up means back up, doesn't it? Okay. So again, I'm pulling my fabric out a little bit. So it's probably easiest if I set my seam first. So that means I'm going to press while it's still folded as I was stitching it. And that gets it all nice and flat and gets the stitches set into the seam. So now I'm trying to do this so that it can not ironing away here. There we go. My cord is. So I'm just holding this over, and I'm pressing down. And I'm holding this over so I hopefully don't get the crease on the other side. And again, you see I'm just pressing, trying not to press my cord. Then I'm going to turn it around and I'm going to do the same thing. Oh, was I going out? And now I'm going in, apparently. So you can't trust me for a minute. So I'm pressing. I'm going to turn it over because I want to make sure I don't have any creases on this side. And I had a little crease there. So my cord keeps getting in my way. I'm going to give this now just a little iron there, but I'm not coming on my edges. I just want to make sure, and this would be much easier with your bigger iron because it has the weight to it. And I just want to make sure that I don't have any like little folds or creases in it. So as I'm going across, I'm not on the fabric, I'm above the fabric. I know it's hard for you to see that. Okay, so there's my 9 patch. And you see it's all pretty nice and even. So let me move the mat out of the way so we get to the important part. Let me just double check to see if we have any questions. Someone was asking about this iron. So this does have steam, and I would normally use steam, but I'm in a little area, and if I knock it over, all the water would come out, and so I haven't steamed it. But see here, it's got a little opening, so yes, you can have steam. I would normally always be steaming because I think that you have to press a little less when you have steam. Okay, so now here's the important part. We're going to cut. So this is the disappearing 9 patch. It has an easy cut to it. So I'm really cutting it down the middle and across the middle, both directions. And that's why I want the little mat, because I'm going to turn the mat as opposed to turning my fabric. So I know that I started out with a 2.5 inch square. So I know now with the seam, this is 2 inches. And if I'm not sure, I can measure it, and it's 2 inches. So I need to come in an inch from the edge, and the edge is where the edge I'm referring to is the seam. The seam between the first block and the second block, I'm coming in 1 inch. If I can find my rotor cutter. And I'm going to cut. And before I move my ruler, I want to make sure that I'm just pulling it away a little bit, and I can see I got a little piece stuck there. Okay, so I just want to know that it actually cut. If it's easier for you to start with, just don't move it at all, and you can fix any little things with your scissors. Then I'm going to turn my mat. So now it's this direction I went. Now I want to go in this direction. So again, I'm going to put my ruler down on the seam that's between the first block and the second block. Make sure it's straight all the way down. And cut. And now I can pull them away. So let me get this out of the way. So now I have 4 patches. Okay? But you see, now I have my little rectangles and my little baby square, and I didn't have to cut that. So now it's going to be about how I want to turn this and how I want it to look. The goal is to not have seams matching. So if I turn this one turn, you see I have a seam there matches plain. I have a seam here matching plain. So I'm going to go ahead and just see if I turn everybody one turn, what I get. Well, now I have these 2 fabrics together and I have these 2 together. So I can swap them. And which way did I have this one going? This way. So I can swap them around. So now this fabric and this fabric aren't right together. I have these 2 together, but I'm not going to worry about that. So you just have to decide if this bothers you more to have these 2 together. Then if I swap this out, okay, I'm going to have these 2 together, but it's not as noticeable as the darker ones. Does that make sense? So you have to do it to what your eye sees. So your eye is going to see a darker color, a more pronounced color, more than it's going to notice these 2 colors the same. Let me see it, hold it up, see if you see what I mean. So you're going to notice these if they were together because they're darker. So this is turned wrong. So you see, I have a seam and a seam, so I need to turn that like that. If I turn, I can also turn it like that. So no, I can't because see, I have a seam and seam here. So I'm just going to stay like that. And I'm going to sew these together. So you have to remember that once you have a whole bunch of these in a quilt, you're not going to notice all those little imperfections so much, or those colors that might be closer together. So what I'm looking at is the overall look. So now I'm going to do the same thing as I did before, just like a book. I'm going to fold this one on top of this one, and this one is going to flip on top of that one. And I'm going to go ahead and sew. And all I have to do is line up my ends because I have no seams to match. And I'll try to get my hand out of your way. Just one second. And again, I want to make sure that on this side that my fabrics are all lined up together, or my blocks are lined up together. And I'm going to hold on to it. See if I can get out of your way. Right to the end. I'm going to go ahead now and pick this one up. And I pick it up, I'm coming right over in the same direction. I keep trying to hit my pedal to cut my thread. I forget I'm not on the big machine. Okay, so now when I take these off, everybody's together again. I just have to open it up. Oh, come on. Okay, so now I need to flip this one on top. So I haven't pressed again. So I want to turn it over, and I'm going to see how this seam wants to go. Because this has a seam this way, this one wants to go in. Okay, this one can come out. Or the top one's going right, the bottom one's going left. I guess is the easiest way to say it. So I want to put them together. I want to make sure again that I nest that seam. And if I need to pin it, I can pin it. So if I want to put a pin in, oh, I got a pin here. Pin's almost as big as the block. And then I can go ahead and match up my end. And I'm taking my pin out, but my finger is right where that seam is. And I want to make sure I can feel that it's nested together. Oops, sorry. I'm past that seam. And I can make sure I just line these two guys up. And this seam here is going that way. So I want to make sure that it doesn't flip back on me. Okay, so there I am. Now I got to think about pressing. So when I flip this over, oh, let me get up. Move the iron for a minute. Here we go. So when I flip this over, I have a seam going this way and one going this way. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to twirl them. So I want this seam to come down, this seam. So just like a pinwheel, I'm going to come around like that. So what I have to do is I have to clip. Let me see if I can make it so you can see it. I don't know if it'll, there we go. Right here are some stitches. Here's my stitch line, my seam. So I'm going to undo these stitches. They're above this line. So they're not going to, nothing's going to come undone. So I'm going to undo them. And then I have to remember that I have to undo the ones on the other side because they're two separate seams. I know I can't see. Where am I? I have to go without my glasses for this part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this little area here and put it down. So when I push this seam this way, this one this way, when I push this seam this way, this seam this way, now I can see there's a little stitch in there I need to get out. And what's going to happen is, let me give it a little press and then you'll be able to see it better. So again, I'm just going up and down with the iron. I'm going to flip it over and I'll show you the back again. And make sure I don't have any creases. And steam would be nicer to have. So let's see if you can see the little, can you see the little, it's like a little baby 4-patch there. Can you see that? So now if you touch this, there's no bulk. There's no bulk here at all any more than a regular seam would be. So on this side, you won't get that humpy mess from having all that fabric there. I would make all my squares and then I would square them up to whatever size your smallest one would be. I don't have a bigger ruler here. Yeah, I don't. So I would take a bigger square ruler to square that up so it's all nice and even. And it doesn't matter if you need to trim a little bit off the outside. There's no point to worry about. So you can see where this part, so this part comes out a little more than the bottom, but I wouldn't do anything until I had all my squares done for whatever project I'm making. Okay? So that's your disappearing 9-patch because now you can't see where the 9-patch was. So let me set those aside. And now we're going to do the disappearing 4-patch. Okay, so here's our disappearing 4 patch. And what did I do with my fabrics? Here they are. So these, I made this from a 5-inch square, or 5-inch square as a charm pack. So I'm just going to lay out my 4 squares, however I might want them to be. And I do light, dark, big print, small print, however you want to do it. That you want to have some interest there. So I got floral, I got dots. This one's more linear because I don't know if you can see it. It's got lines of, it's kind of lines of fabric, of color. Big print, small print, circles, dots, floral, lines. Covers all the bases, I think. I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to flip it like I'm reading a book. Now this one, you might want to get your pencil and paper out for, because it's not just cutting down the middle. I was scooting my fabric over because I could see the green past the light color. And again, when I get near the end, I'm going to stop. I'm going to pick up my next one. Okay, I'm just going to open them up. And again, it won't let me open in the wrong, see, if I open this direction, it's wrong, but this is the back side of the fabric. It isn't going to let me open it in the wrong direction. Does that make sense to everybody? Did anybody have any questions on the 9 patch while I take a drink of tea? No questions? Okay. So now I have my 4 patch. Remember, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 patches. And I'm just going to flip this one down. And remember, one seam has to go this way. The other seam has to go that way. And what I want to do on this one, because it makes it easier, if I'm sewing this way, so this is on top, I want my underneath seam coming towards me away from the needle of my machine, because as it goes through the machine, if I had it going the other way, it could flip it up. If it's going down, I know it's going to stay where it belongs, and I can control the one that's up at the top. Now, if you find that you're a little puckery or a little wrinkly here, then I would, with the iron, just give it a press to set the seam. Give it a press to set that seam, because sometimes that will help smooth this part out. So see how nice and smooth it is now. Well, it probably isn't when I hold it up with my fingers, but here we go. Now, if I want to right now, I can press, let me turn this, make it easier. I can press to the dark side now with my iron. And what I want to do is, if I'm pressing to the dark side, the dark fabric should be on top, so that when I come in, and let me see if I can do it without getting the cord and everything in the way. I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to take my iron and push that seam open. And I'm not going any further than that. Now, whatever fabric was on top, that's where the seam allowance went. So I would turn this one over. So now I have the dark on the top. I'm trying to do this without ironing the cord. I'm going to open this up, and then I'm going to let my iron nudge it the rest of the way. Then just press. Remember, yeah, I didn't go all the way back and forth. So now, whoop, let me get everybody turned over. There we go. So now I'm turned over. You can see one seam is going away from me. One seam is coming towards me because they're both going towards the dark, and the darks are on opposite sides. So I can just pick this up. And again, I want to remember that my underneath seam, I want facing away from the machine towards me. I'm going to nestle those together. And I want to make sure that I'm nestled together the whole way down. So that keeps everybody this way and this way straight. You can put a pin or a clip if you'd like. I'm going to line up, I'm going to line up my end here. I want to make sure that my fabrics are both in line here. As I get closer, I'm going to make sure that I feel that my seam is aligned and they're nestled together. They feel a little bit apart to me. So I'm going to take my bottom one and I'm holding my bottom one and getting my top one in line. Sorry, I have to do this with. And now I can feel that they're together. Once I get past that seam, I'm going to stop for a second and make sure I'm lined up on all sides. And I'm just going to hold on to it. And again, you can pin if you want to. I find that if you pin and you take out pins, you're pulling the fabric this way and that, so I don't pin that much. But you notice I don't sew without stopping. So every few inches I stop and make sure everybody's playing well together. And I'm holding it right to the end. And now I have my 4-patch. So now this is a bigger example of how to twirl the fabric, and maybe you can see it easier on this one. So what I want to do, I'm doing a pinwheel. So this fabric is going down this way, going down this way, coming down this way. So again, let's see if I can, if you can see it. Right here are the stitches I'm taking out. Here's my seam coming across, so these stitches aren't going to undo anything. And you could use your seam ripper. Let me see if I got mine. I found one the other day. Oh, here we go. Oh. So let me get my chin out of your way. I'm just coming in, trying, and opening up the stitches. Then on this side, and opening up the stitches. And what I always do is, when I open this up, and when I twirl this one this way, this one that way, do you see how it opens up? And I might have a stitch or two still in there that I just need to pick out. So now when I press this, so I'm just going to push it down the center first. So when I press this, I'm pressing this seam down, and I'm pulling a little bit of my fabric over here just so I don't have that crease in the front. And then I can come right down on that little center I did. Let me turn it around. And again, I'm pressing, and pressing my center. And at this point, that's why I would really give it a good steam right there. And I'm going to flip it over. And I'm going to make sure that I don't have any creases in here. And I'm staying away from my edges. It's when you start pushing on these edges and getting them out of shape that you run into more of a problem. So see how nice and flat that is. Can you see? Look. Oh, see how nice and flat that is. Okay? So now here comes the important part. Cutting. Let me make sure there's no questions before I cut this up. Someone asked again, why is it called a disappearing 9-patch? Because the 9-patch disappeared and you can no longer tell that it's a 9-patch. So remember, it was 3 blocks, 3 blocks, 3 blocks. Well, now you can't see where those 3 blocks are. They disappeared. Okay? So now we're going to get ready to cut for our 4-patch. And so we can't cut down the center because we just stitched there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure out from the center seam 1 1/4 inches. Okay, so my 1 1/4 inches is running right down along that seam. Okay. Okay, I'm not going to touch my fabric, and I'm going to lift up my my ruler as nice as possible, and I'm going to turn this all the way around. And I'm going to do the same exact thing. I'm going to measure 1 1/4 inches for that side. So I'm going to put my 1 1/4 inch mark on that center seam again, following it all the way down so that I'm straight. And I'm cutting again. And I'm lifting my ruler. And now I'm going to turn again. And my mat's a little tight for this one, so you have to bear with me because I just have enough room. Because now here's my 2 cuts going this way. Everybody see that? There's 2 cuts going across here. Well, not see it, but understand it because I don't want to pull them apart. So now I'm going to do the same thing going this way. So I got 2 now horizontal. I need 2 vertical. So again, 1.5 inches seam, that middle seam, my 1.5 inch mark, and I have to be careful because I'm going to run off my mat, but I got another mat under it. But so I'm not sure if mine will cut to the end, but we'll see. I'm going to carefully lift, and I'm going to turn this all the way around. I'm going to make sure I'm still lined up okay. And I'm going to do the same. Did I say 1.5 inches? Because if I did, I'm sorry, it's 1 1/4 inches. For some reason in my brain, I just heard 1.5 inches. So 1.25 inches on all these cuts. So my 1.25 inches again is coming down the seam. Oh, sorry. Okay. So I now have, get this up a little higher, get this out of your way. So now I told you that I was going to have trouble at that end. So let me get my little, my little scissors here. And my little ends are still connected. And this is going to happen to you where you have a little spot because you probably should have a newer blade in your rotary cutter. And I didn't pick the best scissors to work with. I just use my little snips. So I have a good size section down here that didn't cut. So I'm just going to push this up, and I'm not going to cut that with my little curvy scissors. So I'm going to use my rotary cutter. I think I've got a nick in my blade because I got these little spots that. Pardon my hands for the arms just for a minute here. Okay, so do you see that I have, let me turn this a little bit more this way. Hold on, let's see if I can get this a little more. Get everything else out of the way. So see, I have 4 square corners. I have my rectangles and my little 4 patch in the middle. So I'm going to change this one and this one right off the bat, and this one and this one. So let's try that. Let's try that. So does everybody understand that so far before I start sewing it together? So now you can't see that 4 patch anymore, so it's disappeared. Let me get a drink. Sorry. I don't want to start coughing on you. Okay, is everybody with me so far? So now we have really a 9 patch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we're going to sew it together the exact same way that we sewed the 9 patch. I'm going to flip this middle column, second column on top of first column. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and grab my first one. And again, I have no seams to line up because there's no seam touching another seam until we get to this center one. Okay, now here I'm going to have to match up my seams. So I already naturally have the dark going in this direction on top, and the dark, it's pressed to the dark already in that one. So I can just nestle those together. And then the last one, there's no seams to worry about. I'm just making sure my ends match and I'm nice and straight. And I just made it crooked. Okay, so my 3 pieces are together. I'm just going to go ahead and open them up. See that? Oh. So now I'm going to flip column 3 on top, but I'm only going to do one at a time. Again, if you want to, you can go ahead and do all three, clip and pin them if you'd like to. So let me do that this time in case that's how you want to do it. So let me put a clip in there. Well, I'll put a pin in because I actually have, ow, burnt myself. I actually have 3 pins. So if you're concerned you're going to have some kind of mix-up, and again, I'm going to match this up as best I can, but I'm going to make sure I rematch it when I get ready to sew that section. My pins are next to my iron, so I burnt myself twice now. You'd think that I would move the pins, wouldn't you? Get this out of the way. Okay, so now I'm all hooked together. I can come right over and sew. And even though I pinned, in the movement around, this kind of went a little crooked. So even though I pinned, I want to make sure I stop and make sure that I'm lined up this way. And I really want to make sure I'm lined up across here too. And always make sure my 2 fabrics are together on the side. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to get my next section ready. So even though I had that pin in and I know my hands are in the way, I'm going to make sure that I lift this up to make sure that my little seams are nestled together, that my fabric is straight along here, straight along the top. I'm going to stop before I'm done. I'm going to get my next one ready. So I'm going to take that pin out. I'm going to line everybody up. Again, along the side, along the top. Generally, if you do the side and the top, the bottom should be correct. Should be. So I'm going to open it up and see everybody's staying in nice order. Just want to check to see if anybody has any questions. So now I can do my pressing again like I did before. So I'm just going to lift this out of the way for a second. Put the mat here. Let me get rid of these pins, because I don't want to be stepping on them later. And I'm going to lay my block down wrong side up. And I'm going to look. Now this time, I have a lot of stuff going on in the center. So I'm going to push these seams going out. And these can come in. And this one can come in. Oh, sorry, you can't see me there. I was watching the cord, wasn't watching where I was going. Okay, the next ones are going out. And then the top ones are coming in. And I'm going to turn the mat to get up to that one again. my pressing mat. Oh. I'm just going to double check that I haven't made any creases. Okay, so now you can see here's our squares on each corner, the rectangles, and then the center 4-patch. I'm going to fold this down. I'm going to make sure I nestle these seams together. And nestle these seams together. And then I'm going to stitch across here, flip it up, do the same at the bottom. So they end up with a disappearing 4-patch. Are there any questions? Okay, so that is the end of our class for today, and I will see you soon. Thanks for joining in.